Sonic Frontiers is really one of those games that gets released and shows how low the bar for Sonic games truly is. It has a pretty bland open world, simplistic combat, a basically non-existent story with emotionless cutscenes that have absolutely no life in them whatsoever. And yet you always heard the exact same sentiment get said about this game from most gaming outlets, stating that the game is a brave new direction for the Sonic series, a very common phrase that we hear whenever a Sonic game isn't total garbage. I mean, comparing this game to some of the 2022 competition is just abysmal and shows how bad this truly is. Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Tunic, TMNT Shredder's Revenge. I mean, this was one of the best years in gaming in a very, very long time. And then there was Sonic Frontiers. And look, I will admit this is the best Sonic game in a long time. And it is the highest selling 3D Sonic game ever. But that bar is so low, it's practically in hell. And I know that this is an extremely common thing to say in the gaming industry these days, but it was basically Breath of the Wild except Sonic. The bigger, grander open world with a focus on exploration, the optional shrine puzzles with new gameplay, and the little Cocos that you collect that feel strangely a lot like Kuroks from Legend of Zelda. The most redeeming element of this game has to be its gameplay and Sonic zipping through the environment, and even that is severely buggy and janky. You can't run for longer than 5 seconds without hitting an incredibly small rock and getting launched 15 feet into the air. And the combat is just straight up ridiculous. All you do is spam square, and the harder you spam it, the more combos that you get from Sonic, and this is bland even by Sonic standards. The more on-rails sections where you're doing a lot of the parkouring bits are fun in some aspects, but they just get tedious and annoying after a while and feel more like obstacles than some fun that you'd actually have. And like I said, the story is just devoid of any and all emotion. I feel myself falling to sleep during these cutscenes. I don't want to just sit here and watch two Sonic characters stare at each other and deliver some of the most boring dialogue you've ever heard. One of the absolute biggest atrocities that this game commits is not having more playable characters at launch. The Sonic universe is full of so many colourful characters with distinct personalities and abilities, and yet this game at launch only has one playable character. I know that they're about to release an update that's going to add like 3 or 4 characters, but I guarantee you they're just going to feel exactly like Sonic, but basically reskinned. Look at Sonic Heroes, a game that released in goddamn 2003. It had so many things that Sonic Frontiers, a 2022 release, didn't have. Like a gigantic cast of varied and unique characters playable from launch, beautifully animated cutscenes that had life and story to tell and had that Sonic charm, and fun and unique level designs that are colourful and way more interesting than anything Sonic Frontiers has to offer. How does a PlayStation 2 game in 2003 have more to its content, depth, gameplay, character design, and basically everything than a 2022 release? That is ridiculous. And look, I know graphics aren't everything, I know that you can't just judge a game solely by its graphics, but this being a PlayStation 5 game is an insult to humanity. I mean, this game looks horrible. I mean, look at Elden Ring and God of War. I know not a whole lot of games are going to stand up to them in many aspects, but to release in the same year as those and to look like Sonic Frontiers is just abysmal. And the game just stinks of Unity. It just feels like it was created in the Unity engine. Everything's so randomly generated and placed. The render distance is horrible. The physics engine just feels wacky and goofy, and it just doesn't feel fun to control. Sonic's movement and running around the environment, plus the supersonic gameplay sections, are probably the most redeeming aspect of this game. The most original idea this game has is having boss fights where you play as Supersonic, and these are interesting, but even they start to get dull after a while. And like I said before, most previous Sonic games let you play as a whole cast of different characters. Look at Sonic Adventure 2, which lets you play as Knuckles and Tails right from the beginning, and Sonic Heroes, which had 12 different playable characters at launch. That's incredible, and yet Sonic Frontiers, a game released for the PlayStation 5, only has one playable character at launch. Sonic Adventure 2 had a full playable story with multiple different characters with their own unique branching storylines within that story. Sonic Heroes, again a 2003 game, had unique storylines with their own cutscenes and characters to play as. And yet a game that was released 19 years later, 3 console generations ahead, doesn't even have half the content, character or heart that a PlayStation 2 release had. Now look, I know I've been mostly negative in this video, but the reality is this is a good step in the next direction. It's a pretty rocky foundation as Sonic generally is, but this game sold pretty well, and I have high hopes that a sequel could expand upon this and be a lot better. No doubt Sega's going to see the success of how well this game sold, and they're going to move forward with a sequel. I mean, they would be silly not to. And at launch, I would love to see more playable characters, a more fleshed out storyline, and please, for the love of God, some cutscenes that actually have any life or depth to them whatsoever. Let's not end this video on a low note. Let's collectively pray that Sega really focuses next time around and builds upon this foundation and really makes a great sequel. One with much better animations, physics, a better open world, more refined gameplay, and hopefully more playable characters and better cutscenes. Otherwise I'm gonna spin dash off of a cliff.